welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today we are headed to Pensacola, Florida for a travel vlog. I was recently there to visit a friend before heading on to New Orleans. So this is going to be part one of, I guess, a two-part trip. And yes, this one will just focus on Pensacola. We're going to head to some beaches and go to some historic homes. So we're just going to jump straight into the footage. All right, kicking us off, we are headed to the beach the morning after I got in, and we are headed to Johnson's Beach, which is a national park. So if you do head this way, you need to pay some sort of park fee or have an America the Beautiful pass. Once here, we sat out and relaxed for a bit. I did get my first two ever sandfly bites, and they really hurt, so that was not my favorite. But it was windy enough that I only had 2 bites, and we were able to be here for a while. As you can see, the surf is a little bit worked up. I then began a kind of long beachcombing walk, which is what I usually like to do on beaches. I like to get up, walk. I don't really like to lay out because I don't really like being sunburned, and I do sunburn pretty easily. So I walked pretty far up the coast here and just enjoyed watching the water and all that stuff. It was a little bit too chilly at this point, or I was not quite yet warm enough to want to get in the water. So yeah, I'm just walking around. It was really pretty out here. I have not been to a beach like this in a while, probably since last year when I was in Phuket. So it was fun to be kind of on a nice weather beach again. I mean, Cape Cod earlier this year was nice, but we weren't there quite in prime season where it was like beach time. I came across this little sandpiper who picked up some food and almost lost it again, and it was so cute. I love sandpipers. We have them on the West Coast too, and I think they're a really cute bird. I also found this fun little jellyfish blob thing. Very, very like puffy, not as flat as a lot of things I've seen wash up. As I was walking, I noticed I was on all of these little tiny clam beds, and look at how quick this one just like goes into digging itself into the sand. I always think it's so cool how quick clams move. After I had my fill of walking, I walked back past the sandpiper guy on my way back to where we were sitting so I could go in the water because I was finally warm enough. I only bring you in the water with me for a second. I just wanted to kind of show you how clear I felt like the water was. I was like able to find some shells while out here, some really, really big clam shells, which was fun. I enjoyed being in the water, but I did not keep my GoPro with me all of the time. I just took you guys for a little bit, and then I went back in and just enjoyed it myself. I did not notice very many other people in the water when I was in the water, but I get it. It was not like perhaps the warmest day. It's just when you're from the Pacific Northwest, anything higher than 70 is a warm day. But after that, we headed into town, and by town I mean on this peninsula, to grab some food, and we actually crossed into Alabama, which was interesting because I don't think we had really realized we were in Alabama until all of a sudden we realized we were in Alabama. So that was interesting. If you look at a map of Pensacola, it's actually pretty fascinating how it is shaped. It's really, really interesting with the barrier islands. And while eating dinner, a heron came to give a visit. I believe his name is Fred, but he's really cute, and he just kind of was poking around the restaurant, looking at us, looking at people eating, probably hoping for scraps when people left. But that was pretty much it for the day. And then for this next day, we're headed on to the barrier island that contains Pensacola Beach, and we are headed to Fort Pickens area to do some seashelling, which I'm really excited about because the seashells here are a lot different than the seashells from the West Coast. This beach was absolutely empty. It was really cool. We were like 2 of the only people on it, and you could tell that no one had been by before for a while because obviously the tide line, so that was really cool. Up where the waves broke earlier, you could see there's just tons of little micro seashells that are complete, which was really cute and fun. It's been a while since I've seen like shells this tiny, and the water here was so clear. I'm sure I've seen water this clear in my life before, but this was really wild. You can even see like the sand where the like ripples are. Like it is clear. It was really cool. We were here at low tide. I didn't wear a swimsuit to this round of a beach, and I deeply regretted it. I wanted to be in the water so bad. So I did get pretty wet in my normal clothes. And then there were all these really big bird prints. I put like a stamp of my foot so you could see how truly big these bird prints are. So that was pretty fun. And you can see like there's a little crab hole there too and everything. I found absolutely no whole sand dollars, but I did find this kind of cool partial sand dollar. Their sand dollars are really different looking from the sand dollars on the West Coast, or at least the Northwest Coast, with like little holes in it. They're huge too. It was wavy enough it wasn't as clear as it could have been, but I just wanted to stick you guys underwater so again you could see how clear this water was. It's crazy. Somehow I accidentally pointed you at my face, so here's a really flattering shot of me on the hunt looking for shells in the waves. I figured out that all the conch shells, it rolled a certain way, and so you had to keep looking. So I just think this is really funny footage. I am on the hunt. I am focused. And then on our way off the beach, we saw these big crab holes, and I got to say hi to another heron. From there, we decided to walk out on the pier, which I was super excited about because the water was so clear. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if people know of places, I can't think of really big piers you can go out of in Seattle like this, so I always really enjoy a pier walk. And we were out for a treat right off the bat. First thing I saw was this little black stingray, which again, the water is so clear, so it was so fun to look out. So I was getting really excited about this. And then all of a sudden, this giant fast shark chasing a school of fish came into view. I'm going to get you guys the best footage I can on this, but I was not the most steady when trying to film this shark, but it was crazy. I have never seen a shark that big, that close to shore. Definitely made me think of like all the people in the water down below. It was pretty wild, but I have never seen anything like this, and it was so darn cool. That was one of our exciting spots of the morning. And I don't know if it's a low tide or a morning thing or what it was, but I did notice that the water I felt like got less clear as we were out there. But here it's still really, really clear and you can see straight through down to the bottom. You can only kind of see it here, but there's a giant school of fish right around the post there. You can kind of see them splashing and like going up to the surface. We could see what looked like a manta ray kind of lurking around, likely hunting. And so we were wondering if that was maybe what got a fish all riled. And then here you can see two types of fish. What's really cool here is you can see those really long skinny fish, these needlefish. I thought that was so cool. I have not ever really been able to see schools of fish this clearly, and these were also such like a unique shape that it was a lot of fun. And I know you all are probably bored to death because you can barely see this in the footage, but here is another giant school of tiny little fish here. You can see them, they're the little specks that... And here are even more schools of fish, and if you look here in the left side, you can see a manta ray kind of floating by under there, which is really cool. And then the really little gray blobs you can see floating here are a huge school of jellyfish. I will say, being on the pier, seeing all the sharks and the rays and the jellyfish really made me think twice about wanting to swim in this water. And here's a shark that you can kind of see, but I just really enjoyed sitting here and watching the fish. I could have done it for hours upon hours. At this point, we had to go though. We had other things to do. So here's one final look at this beautiful, beautiful beach. And from there, we headed kind of on a drive through town. And then later we'll return to Pensacola Beach to go on a dolphin tour. I was already a happy camper early in the dolphin tour when I noticed when you looked off the boat, you could see all these fish swimming near the pier. I enjoy watching fish in their natural habitat so much that stuff this simple always really delights me. It did not take long in our dolphin tour to spot some dolphins. Here are 3. It has been a long, long time since I've seen dolphins this close, so I was so excited. I'm going to try not to bore you with too much mediocre dolphin footage, but I loved watching these, so any good footage I have, you will see. Here, just so you know, the dolphins are getting it on. That's what's happening. It is mating seasons, so you see that happening here. There's 3 boy dolphins and 1 girl dolphin, and it is not the best looking thing to experience, but it was kind of interesting. I never thought in my life I would be sitting on a boat watching dolphins mate, so that was something. Like I said, doesn't look like the funnest experience. You can't really tell in this footage, but all the dolphins, their bellies were all like bright pink because they were excited. So that was really interesting. And like I said, not really what I was expecting from this trip, but you know, species have to reproduce somehow, and if there are all these dolphin tours, it's just gonna happen in front of people sometimes. So here you go. But here are some footage of dolphins. I was going to say doing normal dolphin things, but the other dolphins were doing normal dolphin things too. It just was a lot. It was really interesting because they like kind of taught us how to spot where the dolphins were going to surface. So I feel like as time went on, my footage got better because I could kind of predict where they were going to pop up. Overall, I thought this tour was pretty good because I don't feel like they talked the whole entire time. This other boat that you can see near us looked fun, but it wasn't covered, and having a block from the sun was a huge difference while watching the dolphins. If you do not like being in the sun, like me, or you like having sun cover, or you need to have sun cover for medical issues, I definitely recommend this cruise. I will link it down below. But look at all these dolphins just kind of like chilling along, popping up, breathing. I don't know. They're so cool. Dolphins are just so cool and so fun. I mean, they're also kind of little monsters, but you know, anything that's too smart for its own good can be kind of monstery, like us. I wanted to so badly get a proper dolphin hop footage for you guys. There were some like proper, like, you know, like a picture dolphin hops that happened, but I was never able to capture any quite on footage because obviously I didn't always know what was popping up where. But overall, this was a really, really cool experience and I do recommend it. It seems like they just have dolphins living here year round, which is honestly pretty wild to me, but also pretty cool. I mean, I guess I technically live in a place where orcas live year round, so it's not like I am unfamiliar to the idea of living near cool aquatic life, but it was really fun to see these. And once we reached the end of our cruise, we headed back to the bay. I just want to point out this thing that we're going by is one giant house. Because yes, people are that wealthy. It's truly wild. Look at this little heron guy. It is truly so stunning out. We took like the sunset cruise essentially, which I definitely recommend. And then here we are driving back across the bridge to Pensacola for dinner. And we had this lovely view from the restaurant. I really enjoyed it, seeing all the boats come in and out. It was kind of a bayou. It was very fun, and I loved the sunset. But yeah, that's it for today. So today we're going to spend all our time in the historic Pensacola Village, which is an area that has a ton of restored and kept historical homes, as well as trains and other stuff, and it was really interesting. And we came specifically for an 11 o'clock tour that takes you through 3 historic homes from 3 different eras, as well as a historic church. So there are so many historic buildings and museums you can get into just for paying for this $12 ticket, but it was really cheap and the ticket lasts 7 days. So if you're in the Pensacola area visiting, I would highly recommend doing it because this is really cheap for everything you get from it. And I thought it was overall really well done. If you've been around this channel long, you know I am a big sucker for a working class historic home. This does have one called the Julie House, which is even more interesting because this is a house that would have been home to free Black Americans pre-Civil War as well as through the Reconstruction era. This house would have been built in 1805. It was moved to this location. Here it is set up as it would be seen more Reconstruction-ish, and they do have a sewing machine and they have lots of really like fun textile history on display here, which I really enjoyed, obviously being a bit of a textile nerd. So this was really, really cool. It was really well done and I really enjoyed, again, seeing a working class home, because so often the only thing preserved are the homes of wealthy white people. I was also excited. They had some beauty berries growing here, which was fun. I've seen beauty berries on TikTok, so I was very excited to see them in real life. And then moving on to this home here, which you have to take the actual tour to get into. This is the Lavelle House. It was built in 1805. This would have been during the Spanish period. And then this home, I took a lot of footage in. This is the Door House. This is the house of a wealthy white woman from 1871, and it's absolutely stunning. I think they've done a really good job keeping it reconstructed and having the furniture and all of that, and I thought our tour guide was really great. He gave us just a lot of great facts about the home, and I really liked in this historic home all the vintage like papers and dishes and things that were out. I thought it was really, really cool. And this house actually had a bunch of garments in it, which was very exciting for me. These are all under things, so this would have been like your bum pad, your shifts, your corset covers, all that good stuff. Really beautiful, really detailed. They also had this sewing machine, which of course I have to film every sewing machine I see. This is a pretty neat one. This was also set up to talk about mourning, so these are some hair Victorian jewelry pieces. I actually have a piece like this. And then the main parlor was set up as it would be for a wake, so that was really interesting. During October, they do a Victorian mourning tour, and we weren't able to take that just due to time constraints. However, we did get to still see the parlor set up for mourning, which is always really interesting, you know, black over the mirrors, the casket, all that good stuff. Really, really interesting, and glad we came this time of year. And it also featured some of Miss Door's clothing, Victorian pieces that were really cool. I've seen a lot of clothing from this time frame, but it's always really fun when you can see it kind of out in the room, out in a space. I really wish you could see the details of this black mourning piece, but it was really, really cool. Here are also some other morning pieces they have out on display. If you happen to not catch them here during Halloween time, they do have a Victorian morning display in the museum. And then this home here is the Lier Rocheblave house. This is a really beautiful house. They've done a lot of really funky things with it, so I would definitely not say it's a fully true to form historical home. They have a lot of really great historical pieces of furniture and statues, and again, the papers and the china and all of that is really true to history, but upstairs we get a little bit funky by looking at some speakeasies. This home was eventually made into a boarding house, so there are some different aspects of that throughout. This here would have been the main woman's place she lived, the person who owned the boarding house, and there were lots of interesting things in it, including photos. Again, I thought they had just like really nice small details here everywhere, like on top of the dressers and stuff. Sometimes historic homes, they don't do as good of a job staging it, or if they do such a good job staging it, you can't really go near enough to look at anything. So this was rather nice for me because I love looking at all these different things. We did get a little funky upstairs. They showed kind of a faux speakeasy and just talked about the history of Prohibition, which is really interesting and like an interesting thing to learn about, but definitely like would not have been in a normal home. They also have like an early movie theater kind of 20s set up here, which was actually really, really cool because they talked a lot about Jacksonville and the history of the basically all black cast of the Flying Ace, and how a lot of these films of the time that featured all black casts were lost to time, the Flying Ace being the exception, but it was really, really interesting and a part of history I had no idea about. So they did a great job, in my opinion, on this tour, highlighting things in history that somebody who loves history doesn't know a ton about. And then from there, we headed into the Pensacola Museum of History, which you're going into is included on the ticket, and I was headed there specifically for their Victorian morning exhibit. They have a little room full of Victorian morning pieces. A bunch of these pieces were actually in the house that we just saw, but they did have this really big hair wreath. But that concludes our historic Pensacola tour. And from here, I am now headed to New Orleans. You saw me pass a Alabama sign, so we are driving our way to New Orleans. Already, you've seen all the footage. I hope you enjoyed it. My final thoughts on visiting Pensacola. Honestly, it was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. I mean, is it probably going to be your top tourist destination for Florida? Maybe not, but I did think there were a lot of things worth seeing. I thought the beaches were cool. It was really nice to be there in October when it wasn't very busy. Food was good. Like, I had a really, really enjoyable time there. It just definitely felt more like a place you might go if you're local to the area, as opposed to like if you're like me and you live in Seattle, you'd probably not go there for like a vacation. But since I had a friend living there that I wanted to see, I am really glad I went, and it was a fun part of the country to see and a place I hadn't been before, so I always enjoy that. And I will say I thought the beachcombing was quite good. I found a lot of shells, which I'll pop a lot of the shells that I got probably over to my right. These are a super different variety of shells than what I'm used to finding. Usually I am used to finding like cold water species. I have not been to like a warm water beach like this to look for shells in a very long time, so there were some really fun tropical ones. The scallop shells there are very different in color from the scallop shells here. And then yeah, I actually found some, conch is not the right term, but like the spirally shells, which I don't find those almost ever anywhere else, so I was pretty excited about that. I did also find this really giant clamshell, which is fun. I actually had the opportunity to pick up a bunch of these, but I don't need a ton. I just grabbed one. I could feel it underneath my feet while I was in the water, so I snatched it up, and I'm pretty happy with it. If you do visit Pensacola, I highly recommend going to the pier and walking down the pier. It like costs money, which threw me off coming from a West Coaster. I've never paid to walk out on a pier, but the wildlife that I saw was so worth it. It was such a cool walk, and I wish I like had access to pier that with that clear of water all the time. I would just go there and look for animals constantly. So I did really enjoy that. And then I also thought their historic like downtown preservation, like the ticket that you spent $12 and it gave you access to, I can't remember, a lot of museums and a lot of historical houses. So I think if that's something you enjoy, it's well worth it. And I also thought all the exhibit and tours and stuff were really well done. So I also think like it's worthwhile to go regardless. I also thought it was like worthwhile to go. Sometimes you go to kind of some of those smaller things and they're not worth the money, but this one you would definitely get all of the bang for your buck. I will probably link a map down below of the places we ate and everywhere we went. I did thoroughly enjoy my time there, enjoyed enjoyed the food there. And yeah, if you happen to be in the region, I definitely would recommend stopping through Pensacola. I would have to actually really look around Florida, but I believe the Barrier Island situation is like kind of unique in the way the port works. And again, I also really enjoyed the Dolphin cruise. So yeah, I will say I really enjoyed my time there, even if I don't know that like I would have ended up there if I didn't have a friend who lived there. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on traveling to Pensacola. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Like I mentioned earlier, I stopped here because I was going to be in New Orleans, and it's only a few hours from New Orleans driving wise. Next up in this series, which is going to be 2 weeks from now, I will take you along to New Orleans with me, and I did a lot of really fun things there as well. If you enjoyed, definitely subscribe and stick around to see that New Orleans trip. Normally this is a fairly sewing oriented channel, but I do post travel vlogs when I travel. So, and then of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up or comment down below. It really helps me out in the algorithm. And I will see you next week on Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Bye!